Thanks for joining me on this journey, and welcome to the Journey with Jennie podcast on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV, where we hit all the topics that help and encourage you on this journey of life. Everything from health to mindset to business to finances. Anything that helps you and makes your life better, we cover it all. Welcome. Well, I have a treat for you today. This is going to be a great conversation about how to heal your body naturally. And there are so many things that we can be doing on our own day in and day out that can be so beneficial for our bodies and that can bring healing. And the thing is that you might not even realize that you need healing in your body. And we're going to be talking about that today too. So the really cool thing is that it's not just me today. I have a very special guest with me, and she is going to bring guidance and wisdom to this conversation. Risa Groux is with me today. And if you are not familiar with Risa, let me just share a little bit about who she is. Risa Groux is a functional nutritionist and certified autoimmune coach in private practice in Newport Beach, California. She has always been passionate about nutrition and good health. Risa was so concerned about purity that she made her children's baby food from scratch. Today, she is passionate about cooking and creating healthy, nutritious food. She works with a wide array of clients from professional athletes, adults, and kids to The Biggest Loser from season 4. Risa works with issues like diabetes, autoimmune disease, cancer, digestion, thyroid, and hormone imbalances, to name a few. Risa firmly believes that the body can heal itself with whole foods that we obtain from the earth, and she sees living proof of that in her office each day. She looks at root causes using functional nutrition guidelines, blood and stool tests, and knows that weight loss is a side effect of wellness. I am thrilled to have Risa here today. Risa, welcome.
Thank you, Jennie. It's really good to be here.
Oh, it is so great to have you. I'm just really thrilled for this conversation because I know it's going to be so helpful to my listeners, because the thing is that you address things that are critical to our overall health, and you help to connect those dots and you get to the root cause of their issues and just really help them to have that healing in the body. So I'm really excited for this conversation. So let's start. So you are a functional nutritionist. So let's start with that, with how does a functional nutritionist differ from traditional nutritionists and dietitians, because I think that distinction is really helpful because it can get really confusing in the health world.
It is confusing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So we are very different, actually. Very traditional dietitians or nutritionists are usually looking at the working with the government pyramid, or now we call it the government plate. And we're looking at sort of a one size fits all for everybody. There's percentages, there's different food groups, and I work very, very differently than that. So what I do in functional nutrition is that I'm always there's 4 pillars that my practice is based on. The first one is we look at root causes. So why is it that this person is having chronic bloating or chronic headaches or constipation or diarrhea or whatever it is, right? Why is their thyroid low, or what's going on? We're looking at root causes because we know that it's not a deficiency in medication, right? We don't have high cholesterol because we were born with a deficiency in right? So we want to know what the driver is of that. Why is it elevating? The second thing that I do in my practice is I look for prevention. So in conventional allopathic medicine, we're typically we don't treat anything until we're actually diagnosed with a disease. And so we look at prevention. In functional nutrition, we look at our reference ranges are a little bit tighter than regular allopathic medicine. And then the third thing that we look at is we look at the body as a whole interconnective unit. So everything has to do with each other, right? In conventional allopathic medicine, we have different doctors for different appendages, different glands, different organs. We don't really look at the whole body together. We don't really communicate. So we do in functional nutrition. And the fourth pillar that we work on, or I do in my office, is data. I need to see the data. I'm not very good at playing darts with the lights off, and I cannot see the card.
Very difficult.
You're good at that, but I'm just not good. So I like to see exactly where I'm looking, where I'm going, what I know, what health issues do we have? Do we have a congested liver or gallbladder, or do we have inflammation markers, or dysregulated blood sugar, or a thyroid that's off? So we need to know all the data. And I do extensive blood tests, as you mentioned, and extensive stool tests. I look at 84 pathogens. I'm looking at all kinds of things that can contribute to poor health. And at the end of the day, those are the foundational issues. I'm always looking at systemic inflammation and gut health.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness, there's so much to unpack there. And I absolutely love everything that you just said because I feel like this is such a missing piece in in our lives, period, as Americans, like Western medicine, Western health. And I would love to just unpack some of those things because I think this is why what you do is so beneficial. And I think there's a real lack of knowledge of understanding that this even exists and what you do exists and people like you that exist.
Mhm.
So I would love to hear a little bit of, and I think it would be really interesting for our listeners to hear a little bit of your backstory of how you got here, because this is not a common thing, right? Growing up to say, oh, I want to be a functional nutritionist. And, often it's like, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to, fireman, whatever. But so how did you come into this? Share with us some of your personal story of how you got to helping people find the root cause and heal their bodies naturally.
Sure. So I've always had a passion for nutrition. I don't know why. I've always been interested in it. I grew up in a home. My mother was always on a diet, or things were fattening, or they weren't fattening, or they were good, or they were bad. And she was never really overweight, maybe 5 or 10 pounds. She wanted to perpetually lose. And then my grandma was always talking about the same language, something's fattening, and she was always going to the fat farm for a year every year, well, with my aunt. And I realized that was at the spa. They would go to Canyon Ranch, and that was called the fat farm. But I would call it the health farm. But anyway, there was just a lot of this conversation around me growing up. And I'm thinking, why are some foods bad and why are some foods good? So
Mhm.
I just got really into health and nutrition very early on. I went to college and got my degree in business, and I ended up going down a very different road. But all the time I was always reading books on nutrition because I really was just very interested and passionate about it. And then when my kids were born, I thought, I have the perfect guinea pigs here. I'm going to just give them real food and see what happens, right? I'm not going to give them processed foods and sugars and dyes and chemicals, and like everybody else
Mhm.
was. And I thought, this will be kind of cool, right? So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, I made their food from scratch.
Mhm.
I didn't give them anything artificial for a long time. I mean, it was a process. So my
Yeah.
kids do eat really well now, and they're not perfect by any stretch of the
Mhm.
imagination, but they really crave good food. So we all do, because we eat real food a lot. And then I was diagnosed with a hypothyroid when I was trying to get pregnant. I got pregnant my first time, no problem at all. And then we were trying for baby number two, and I just couldn't get pregnant. And then I couldn't keep the baby. And we went to a fertility specialist, and
Mhm.
then he said, "Oh, you've got this underachieving thyroid, and here's a pill." And I said, "Well, how long do I take it for?" And he said, "Every day." And I said, "No, no, no, for how long?" And he goes, "Oh, the rest of your life." And I thought,
Mm.
hmm, why am I taking a synthetic pill that is going to mimic something that my body should be producing naturally? Like, was I born defected? And why is this not happening? Right? Let's look
Yeah.
at the why.
Yeah.
And then I went through kind of a checklist to realize what was going on with me. And I went down that list and realized, of course, all these things were pertaining to miscarriages and infertility.
Mm.
And then I had my son. Second pregnancy was great. And then after that, shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease where your body creates antibodies and it just finds a place to land. And in my case, it landed on my thyroid. A lot of people have Hashimoto's, very common. And autoimmune diseases are kind of like a collection. We like to collect them. So once we have
Mhm.
one, we tend to get more. You don't want that, and you can reverse them. So I'm about 10 points away from reversing my Hashimoto's,
Yay!
which is
Congratulations.
thank you. I can't wait to get there. And it's been, I was at, 1,456 was the number.
Wow.
Yeah, originally. So I've come a long way. It's
Yeah.
taken a lot of work and dedication and research and all that, but it can be done. We do it in my
Mhm.
office from time to time. And so I'm all about why, right? I want to know,
Mhm.
why is it that I got that, and why I don't want to just manage it. I
Yeah.
want to get rid of it. right? I
Yeah,
want to see why is
absolutely.
my body in this state of attack?
Mhm. Yeah, that's amazing, and thank you for sharing that, and I okay, so let's camp out in the thyroid because I feel like this is that so that's the issue that really drove you to that deeper research, right? I mean, you were already on this track, but then just the deeper issue and the healing and that is actually what drove me to the same place as well. It was that for me as well and drove me to deeper research and understanding and that why question, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like that this is a topic that I'm passionate about, not only because it reflects my personal journey, but also because I know that it affects so many women. And
Mhm.
the thing is, without them even realizing it, they don't even know that it's affecting them. So I would love to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the thyroid because if someone is listening who is like not even aware that this exists, like I didn't know what my thyroid was. I had never heard of Hashimoto's. I'm like, I had to look it up. I'm like, Hashi, what? Like, I don't even know how to pronounce that. And so what would you say this is like you even mentioned like it's a big problem. So tell us a little bit more about like who does it affect and why do you think it goes so underdiagnosed?
Yeah. Autoimmune is increasing. The average person goes to 6 doctors before they do get a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease. Thyroid and affects 8 times more women than men. And autoimmune in general affects more women than men. There's a lot of studies about
Hmm.
this. They talk about hormones and hormone dysregulation that could be a part of this, but really a third of it is genetics, and so more than that's the big part of it. And then the second major contributor to autoimmune is leaky gut, and unfortunately, we're exposed to so many toxins now, and this is a new number, but the FDA has just approved 86,000 chemicals for us to use. That is an
Oh
obscene number,
my
more than
God.
any other country on the planet,
Oh,
and over 3,000 of which we can eat. So we're
oh,
eating them, we're breathing them, we're putting them on our skin. They're in our shampoos and our deodorant and our sunscreens and our perfumes and our chairs and our pajamas and our paints and our walls. I mean, we're just constantly affected by toxins and they do a little bit of havoc. So I'm a huge fan of detoxifying. I have my own detox that I do regularly because you have to take the garbage out, right? You have
yeah,
to clean out the garage or you
yeah,
cannot park the car in there. So really important to detoxify. So we've been exposed to all these chemicals and most people are unaware of these chemicals, especially in our food. We don't look. I look
mhm.
at ingredients in supplements day after day. I mean, I just looked at several today that I said, "You want me to throw it out or do you want to throw it out?" There's just crazy amounts of dyes and
Mm,
chemicals and additives and sugars and I mean it's just crazy the impurities of
mm,
what we use especially even our supplements. So
yeah,
that's a big factor. There's some other factors like pathogens and viruses. Epstein-Barr virus, for instance,
mhm,
can dysregulate blood sugar and thyroid and cause up to 33 autoimmune diseases. There's a lot of pathogens in your gut that can cause autoimmunity. So I test for those all the time. And those are the easy ones because once you kill those, we usually see a reversal of that.
mhm,
And then there's things like a gene mutation MTHFR that is very common that I test everybody for. And then there's lack of vitamin D um,
mm,
toxicity and mercury, a lot of heavy metal buildup
mhm,
be another one. So there's lots of contributing factors to autoimmunity, and unfortunately, we're a growing number
yeah,
because of these reasons. I mean, the your genetics load the gun, and the environment and your lifestyle, unfortunately, pull the trigger. So you
yeah.
have to be really diligent about what you're doing, what you're putting in your body, and how you live.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the signs of a thyroid being off kilter? So, if someone is kind of curious about this, what would they be noticing is going on? And they're like, maybe I do have an issue with my thyroid.
So the thyroid is sort of this very complicated mechanical system. And I liken it to building a fire, right? So when we build a fire, we have some kindling and we have some wood. But no matter how much kindling and wood you have, you will not have a fire unless you have a match. So what I refer to that, the kindling is what we call our TSH, our thyroid stimulating hormone. Our T4s are inactive thyroid hormone, and that's the majority of the equation. It's 93%. That's our T4. And then our active thyroid hormone is only 7%. And that conversion needs to take place from T4 to T3. And a lot of people don't convert. And T3s are active thyroid hormone. So that's the match. So if you are lacking in T3, you're going to see fatigue, lack of weight loss or easy weight gain. You're going to see maybe some depression or anxiety, sleep troubles, constipation is a big one. The outside of the eyebrows start thinning, the nails are peeling, the hair is thinning. Those are very typical signs of a low T3. Exhaustion. I had a woman come in today that was
Yeah.
just like, I felt like giving her a pillow and a blanket. If I had one in
Ah.
my office, I would have. Just and I looked at her numbers, and she's in the tank, and so she
Ah.
needs a little thyroid hormone. So
Yeah.
um, those are the symptoms. Yeah.
Okay, that is such a great explanation. I've never heard it explained that way before. So thank you for that. That's such a great image of understanding it. And that was awesome because I was going to ask you, okay, break down the T3, T4 reverse, and you did it in just the explanation of it. So that is awesome. So if those of you listening didn't catch that, go back and replay that several times to break that down and follow that because that is a really, really great picture. So then, okay, so if someone says, okay, I you just ticked off a bunch of things, that's me. I'm going to go to the doctor and talk to them about it. Talk to us about some of the pitfalls that they can run into. Maybe you would suggest not going to the doctor. Maybe you have other suggestions, but I know what happened for me was that, okay, and what happens to a lot of people, your numbers look great. But then there's this thing called antibodies. And so talk to us about the antibodies, like talk to us about how the blood work can look deceiving, but you still have all these symptoms. So how does all that work out?
I'm super glad you brought that up, Jenny, because it is a huge issue. Because 99% of the people who walk in my office with thyroid issues come in and say, my doctor says I'm doing great. I've been on Synthroid for 25 years and I'm great. So what they're looking at in allopathic conventional medicine is they look at TSH. So they're looking to see how much kindling you have. Now, if your kindling is not high, then they are just assuming that your body's saying, "Oh, we have enough fire. We don't need to make more kindling." But they don't even actually test it. Again, I had somebody come in today with labs, a different person who just had a TSH and a T4, but they didn't have the T3. And then there are basically 9 markers that I look at. So in addition to the TSH, T4 and T3, you're inactive and your active thyroid hormone. They have 4 atoms of iodine and 3 atoms of iodine. We cleave off one to activate it. But when we look at hormones of any kind, I always look at total and free. Free means it's unbound, that's what's usable to the body. And total is the sum of what's unbound and what's bound to proteins. Very helpful for guidance. Then I also look at reverse T3 because if you have a lot of cortisol, you're very stressed out, you have a lot of inflammation, you're going to start reversing your T3. So you might be fine with your T3, your active thyroid hormone, but your cortisol is pulling on it. And then we look at T3 uptake, which tells me is estrogen competing for the site? Same with men, it's estrogen and testosterone that's competing for that site. And then we look at antibodies. I do this with every person I work with. So we look at thyroid peroxidase antibodies and we look at thyroglobulin antibodies. And those are 2 different antibodies. You might have both, you might have one. And that will tell us if you are in the state of attack. If your Th17 on your Treg cells have activated because you have autoimmunity, and you're now in what we call a cytokine storm, where we have a constant cycle of inflammation. Cytokines are inflammation, NF kappa B gets involved, and we start to get into this circle of inflammation. And if we don't change it, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then we usually tend to accumulate autoimmune diseases. So I want to put that fire out. We've got a huge fire in the basement, and maybe they've come in with some Synthroid and they've got a little squirt gun trying to put out that huge fire. Right? I'm going to come in with that fire hose and get that fire out. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we need to put that fire out.
And can you explain? You mentioned leaky gut earlier, and so leaky gut plays into this with the autoimmune factor. So can you explain? Just in layman's, well, you're so good at just giving little explanations. Like, how does leaky gut play into this autoimmune part? or
So
any of it?
leaky gut basically is also known clinically as intestinal permeability. And what that means is we have one layer of epithelial cells in the intestinal lining, right? We have seven on the outside skin, but we have one very fragile layer of epithelial cells. So it's very fragile. And above that, we have some villi that protects us. Now, things come through the system. They could be stress, they could be toxins, they could be organ malfunctions, pathogens. It could be bread, sugar, dairy, and alcohol. Gluten is a really, really effective way to start creating what we call tight junctions, those holes in the intestinal lining. And what happens is they all go through the intestinal lining, and then they start to poke little holes, little fissures. They're called tight junctions. And then all these undigested proteins go in. So, like people would say, oh, I'm allergic to eggs. Well, you're not really allergic to eggs, but you're showing a food intolerance to them because that protein goes in and the body goes, who are you? You're coming in through the back door. You're the enemy. And it starts to create antibodies. And we do this long enough when we get food intolerances and inflammation. And then
Mhm.
eventually we get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So it is critically important to what I call put grout on that leaky gut, fill those holes so that we just don't keep perpetuating this huge fire that we've got going. So what you eat matters, and healing that gut is super important. Again, the detox is something that will pull the gluten, bread, sugar, dairy, and alcohol out of your diet and all those inflammatory foods and take out the chemicals so we're not continuing to poke those holes.
Yeah. And so then it sounds like what you just said was a really nice segue from the thyroid specifically that we were just talking about, and then to broaden it to all autoimmune diseases. And then, really, even I would guess wider to like you had a list of all different issues and illnesses that you work with in your patients. So, what would you say is the commonality between all of these different illnesses and diseases that you see?
Systemic inflammation and gut health. Those are what it always boils down to. So if your gut is not good, if you've got bloating, if you've got constipation, diarrhea, H. pylori, if you've got heartburn, you have a compromised gut. You might have a compromised gut and not have any symptoms. Eventually, you'll get them, but you've got a compromised gut. So it's really, really, really important to keep healing that gut. I take my gut reboot every single solitary day, and I've healed my gut years ago, but I'm always constantly coming into contact with toxins and things that I need to reboot it. Collagen is also really good. Fiber is good from plants, and bone broth. Those are all really healing. They have amino acids that help to heal those intestinal lining holes. And then inflammation. Inflammation is the driver of disease. So you have to put the fire out. You just have to. If
Yeah.
you've got blood sugar dysregulation, you've got inflammation. And I see labs all day that doctors order, and I rarely see them order the inflammatory markers that I order. How
Yeah.
do you know? Right? How do
Yeah.
you know? You don't test?
Exactly, exactly. And I love that. So it really affects a wide variety of things. So if we haven't touched on something that if you're listening to this and saying like, "Oh, that's me." Like if you haven't said that one time, like I'm guessing you don't live in America would be my guess because this is so common. So that
Love it.
is so helpful. Thank you for breaking all of that down for us and giving us in-depth and explanation. And we're going to take a quick break now, but then we're going to come back and we're going to dive into what can we do about this? What are the things that we can do? And hint, it's something that you've already talked several times about. That's something that we do several times a day that we can just clean up our act with. So we're going to dive into more of what we can do to help these situations and these illnesses and issues that we have. So thank you for listening to Risa Groux and myself on Journey with Jennie on SM Enlightenment Radio and TV. And we will be right back. We are back on Journey with Jennie, and I am joined by functional nutritionist Risa Groux. And we have been discussing how to identify chronic illness and understanding the warning signs. And we did a deep dive into thyroid, and we are now going to switch gears just a little bit and just kind of come back to a higher level and talk about what we can do about chronic illness and diseases as a whole, because the reality is there is a lot that we can do. And I feel so often that I just feel like, we think that we have to sit around and wait and get a diagnosis and then let the doctors give us medicine to fix things. And it seems like just a very Western way of thinking and looking at healing the body, and just a I don't know if I would say a trap that we fall into, or just it's just kind of what we do. But I just really want to challenge you to understand that you are in the driver's seat of your health. And Risa is going to help us with understanding that and knowing what we can actually do, because the truth is that our habits make a big difference on our health, and specifically our eating habits. And I feel like this is just a real foreign concept to many Americans. So be prepared for pushback on this. I was new to this concept, and I remember saying something about this, about eating differently to help my thyroid numbers, to my endocrinologist. And he argued with me. And like, he was like, oh, well, that can't do anything. And I mean, like, every time I went in to see him, like, we had the same argument. We finally agreed to disagree. And I was still new into it. I'm like, I started doubting, like, can the foods I eat affect, like, can this make a difference? So I am here to tell you it can. Shout it from the rooftops. And I'm just really excited for Risa to break this down and help us to understand this, the impact of the foods that we are eating and what it can do for our bodies and the healing it can bring. So there are a lot of different diets, if you will, out there. Just I use that word diet as in just simply a way of eating. And so there's a lot of different kinds of them. And Risa, I would love for you to help us make sense of this. So it's a two-part question. One is, share with us what these diets are, the pros and the cons to them, and then share with us who would benefit, or what kinds of illnesses would benefit from the different eating plans, the different diets. So we're talking about things like paleo, ketogenic, autoimmune protocol, vegan, low Fodmap, low lectin. So things like that. So pick and choose, do them all, do ones that I didn't mention, whatever that you want to share with us, to just give us information about it. Let us know how it can heal our bodies.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, th- I have been working with people for decades. And throughout the years, I used to say, I tried it all. And then a book would come out and I would say, oh, this is the way we should all be eating. And so there's all this science backed up to it. And so in the early years, I was like, oh, this is how we should all do it. And then I would read another book and change. And so I realized throughout the years that it really isn't a one size fits all. It just isn't. And I know these books are great, and they're great for us, a certain amount of people. Those people will thrive, but not everybody thrives on every single diet type or eating lifestyle. And so that's why my methodology I created, called Food Frame, because everybody has a different frame. You should be eating, according to my philosophy, according to what your health status is. So if you have blood sugar dysregulation, I'm going to go through the diet types in a second, but you should be eating a certain way. If
Mhm.
you have different health issues, those are the ones that you should be focusing on. It isn't that we all have that friend or that neighbor or that coworker who just went on keto and lost 35 pounds. And we're
Yes.
like, what? I just tried it and I gained my twin. And it's because that person may be not well suited for keto, right? Not everybody is. So, and I'll get into that in a second. But it really, I mean, we have everything personalized. Netflix tells us what kind of movies we like.
Mhm.
Spotify tells us what kind of music we like. We should be eating according to, we all already do our genetics. We know we have a lot of genetic testing. I've done extensive on mine. We should be eating according to what we can eat. I
Yeah.
don't do well with dairy. It's just every genetic test I've ever had says that. So I don't do a ton of dairy at all. Um, so I think in addition to our genetics, but it's mostly your health status. So I'll break it down for you. My
Awesome.
book, Food Frame, is all about this. And this is what I do with every person I work with in my office. I always start with my detox because, again, we need to take out the trash. And it's a 2-week course. You're eating food. It's not about starvation, it's about cleaning out the body and gently detoxing the liver and the blood. Now, people lose weight. It's not a weight loss program, but people do lose weight because weight loss is a side effect of wellness.
Mhm.
Focusing on wellness. We kind of take the bumpers, we put the bumpers on. You're not eating all the bad stuff. We take out the sugar, the alcohol, the dairy, the gluten, and the soy, and then we're eating real food. And then during that 2-week course, while we're getting cleaned out, we're hopefully doing labs and stool tests. And then we come to the conclusion we've got the mat, we've got the target, the lights are on, we can see it perfectly at that point. So there's 6 different diet types that I talk about in my book, Food Frame, because those are the ones I typically go to with people that I work with. So let's break them down. The first one is keto. That's this being in the state of ketosis. Being in the state of ketosis is when you shift your fuel source from carbohydrates, which we all are born to use carbohydrates or sugar, that carbohydrates turn into sugar. So it's sugar really is our fuel source. And that's what our cells want. That's where our cells have these receptors, and the glycogen, which carbohydrates and sugar get converted into glycogen when insulin gets there, and it delivers it to the cell, and that's how we create energy. Well, in ketosis, we shut off that driver of carbohydrates or sugar because we're having less than 20 net carbs per day, and we're fueling our body with primarily fat. And it doesn't matter if it's good fat or bad fat, it's just fat. So this is the diet type for all the eggs and bacon eaters. This is all the eggs and bacon you want. You can slop some cheese on your eggs. You can have cheese all day long. And this is it's about a 75 to 85% of your daily intake is in fat. Again, doesn't matter about quality, doesn't matter if it's good or bad fat, as long as you're having enough fat to stay in the state of ketosis. Now, I've tried this diet type. I couldn't even get into the state of ketosis. I did a urine stick every day. I just couldn't get there naturally without
Wow.
anything exogenous. So some people can't. This is not a diet type for anybody who doesn't have a gallbladder, because now we tend to have
Yes, too much
really
fat.
sludgy
Mhm.
bile. We can't break down that fat. It's
Right.
not really for women. Women don't thrive as well as men do, but some
Hmm.
women do. And then it's not really for anybody who has a lot of cortisol issues, a lot of stress. They just typically
Hmm.
don't tend to do well on keto.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it is really the whole benefit of keto is to really break down. It brings down blood sugar dysregulation. So if you come into my office and you're fully diabetic, I'm going to give this to you as an option.
Hmm.
If you do have a gallbladder and I look at your stool test and I can see that you can manage fats, I'm going to say keto is an option for you.
Hmm.
Very difficult to stay in ketosis, very easy to get out, difficult to travel with, and I don't recommend ketosis for longer than a 3-month period. It's
Okay.
good. There's a lot of scientific evidence saying that it doesn't cause heart disease. It doesn't increase cholesterol. I've seen it in my office as well. People tend to do well with ketosis. The problem, I think, with ketosis, or the challenge, is getting enough fiber, because all plants have some
Interesting.
form of carbohydrates, and it's very difficult. People have a lot of constipation because they're just not getting
Mm.
enough fiber. And to me, you got to
Mm.
have fiber because it's the trash truck that takes things
Right.
out. So
Yeah.
that's I recommend it long term. Then we have paleo, and paleo stands for the Paleolithic times. And this is sort of the our hunters and gatherers, our caveman,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What did they live on the land years and years and years ago that humans were supposed to eat? And that is animal protein, and it focuses on good quality, not the kind that's pumped with hormones and antibiotics and all that stuff. And then unlimited vegetables, any way you want them, except for deep fried, sweet potato cans, and good fat. So eggs, nuts, seeds, olives, avocado, good oils. And this one is, if I had to say, I had to pick one and say this has the broadest appeal, this is definitely it. It's
Hmm.
easy to stay on. It's pretty much how I eat. Its goal is to decrease systemic inflammation and increase good gut health. So it's very easy to do, and it is very accessible. You can get a lot of foods to go, things that you can travel with, nuts and
Mhm.
beef sticks or turkey sticks and things like that, and vegetables that are really easy to go, and hard boiled eggs, things like that. So I like this one a lot. It doesn't have a ton of challenges. This is my favorite. And again,
Mhm.
this will help decrease or stabilize blood sugar. So those are the 2 ones that I offer to people who have either insulin resistance, prediabetes, or diabetic.
Mhm.
Then we move on to low FODMAP, and low FODMAP is an acronym, and it stands for fermented oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And in plain English, that means, because who understands that?
Exactly. I didn't even know that's what it stood for. I'm just like, always call it FODMAP.
Right. That's what it stands for. If you can pronounce those words, you're in good shape, but then you have to know what they
Exactly.
are. So at
Right.
the end of the day, they're carbohydrates that tend to absorb water. So this is the perfect eating program or eating lifestyle for those of people who have chronic bloating, who have
Mm,
chronic gas, who have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or
mhm,
irritable bowel disease, IBD.
mhm,
That is what I would recommend. Now, this diet type, this eating lifestyle, is an elimination diet. So it's meant to go for 30 to 90 days. So if you walk into my office and I find out you've got SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, yeah, I'm going to recommend low FODMAP.
mhm,
Very difficult, very it's not about calories, but portions are huge. And
mhm,
portions of certain things. Now you can eat all the animal protein you want, but certain vegetables, these are different type of carbohydrates, they will cause bloating and gas. So you might be able to have one asparagus the first week, and then you can work your way up to three asparagus the third week or fourth week. And every body is different. So I give
yeah,
a template in the book. This is how you should eat. But if you do okay with avocados and you're good at a quarter, but a half is going to wreck you, then you're going to stay at a quarter. Or perhaps
mhm,
people can't even get to avocados, they have to wait. So
hmm,
it is very individual, but it's sort of a structured elimination diet.
hmm,
And that you can continually go on once you finish. I'd say go off of it, see how you do with bloating. Of course, I would recommend some supplements for healing the gut and
mhm.
healing the SIBO or treating the inflammation in the intestinal lining for IBS and IBD. And then you can go on that anytime you want to. So you can go off of it for 3 years or 3 weeks and go right back on.
And you said typically like 90 days, is that what you said is typically how long you would probably do that for?
30 to 90 days. Now, the
30 to
sooner
90
you
days.
are up front, the better off you'll be.
Mhm.
Yeah. So onions and garlic are like not, those are
Yes.
really high FODMAPs.
Yeah.
So people just eat onions and garlic and they are really, really bloated and uncomfortable. They probably have SIBO, but get
Mhm.
tested.
Mhm.
Cruciferous vegetables and apples will wreck them, things like that.
Mhm.
And then there's low lectin. And lectins are basically, they fall under this umbrella called anti-nutrients. And anti-nutrients, there's lectins and phytates, and these anti-nutrients are the protective agent for plants, right? So as people, if we get into danger, we can fight, kick, scream, yell, call 911, flee a situation. Plants don't have that ability, so they have what I call a hard candy shell around the germ or the seed, and that way they can stay protected so that they could survive and procreate, which is our two main goals as living organisms. So if somebody eats hummus and they bloat, oh yeah, they don't do well with lectins, right? If we
Yeah.
don't have an acidic environment in our gut, we don't do well with lectins because we can't break them
Mhm.
down. So we need to have digestive enzymes in order to break those down. But lectins are found mostly in nightshades. Those are tomatoes of all kind, peppers of all kind, no matter what kind of pepper,
Mhm.
except for black pepper, um, and um, and then eggplant and tomatoes, eggplant, and potatoes. All potatoes except for sweet potatoes and yams, and goji berries. So we avoid those, and then we also avoid other high lectin foods. So they're all the legumes, all the grains, except for maybe millet. And you can soak or pressure cook your beans, and then it decreases your lectin
Hmm.
levels. But I still wouldn't recommend that for somebody who really wants to get help with inflammation.
Okay.
And um, and so, like squashes, the skin and the seeds are really high in lectins. So you can remove those. Cucumbers, skin and the seeds. Tomatoes, skin and the seeds. So those are things that I would recommend. Those are recommended on the low lectin diet to just avoid.
And would you say that kind of like the low FODMAP, like a certain period of time is typically a certain period of time is beneficial to get past that? Or obviously it varies for different people.
You can really live your whole life on low lectin.
Okay.
You'll lose weight because it again decreases systemic inflammation. This is a eating lifestyle that I recommend for anybody with autoimmune. If they do the autoimmune protocol, which I'm going to get to next, After that, because that's another elimination program, you're either going to jump on low lectin or paleo.
Okay.
Both of them will serve you well because it will help to decrease your inflammation.
Mhm.
But anybody can do the low lectin diet, and you'll lose weight and feel good. And there's certain things you can eat and certain things you can't. And I have that in great detail in my book. And then there's AIP, and AIP is the autoimmune protocol. You're familiar with that.
Mhm.
And for anybody who's been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, if they have not done it once, I highly recommend it. I see amazing improvements with people when they go AIP. It's a very restrictive. It's
Mhm.
basically the paleo program. So we're taking out the beans, the legumes, the sugars, the alcohol, the coffee, chocolate. We also take out nuts, we take out
Mhm.
seeds, and we take out eggs. So you're left with animal protein, lots of good organ meats. That's really helpful. Unlimited vegetables, any way you want them, except for deep fried. And there's a couple of peas, string beans, and corn we don't do. And then good fats and sweet potato. And we do have a little bit of fruit on there. There's select fruits that you can have in moderation. So AIP is great. It's also an elimination protocol, so it's 30 to 90 days. And the whole objective of AIP is to quell the inflammation. We've got this huge
Mhm.
fire we talked about. It's kind of getting a fire hose to get there instead of that squirt gun you've been using. So it really helps get the fire out. And you can do that forever if you wanted to, but it's highly restrictive.
Yeah.
So there's stages where you eliminate and then you reintroduce. And I talk about that in my book as well. There's certain phases that you do. And so AIP is great for that. And then we have vegan or vegetarian. And this is when you take out any animal products. And they're in the book, I talk about different types of vegetarians. So some vegetarians will eat dairy and eggs, and some vegetarians, vegans won't eat any, and they won't have honey or anything that has anything to do with an animal. And so there's different types of vegetarians. So some vegetarians will be the carbohydrate diet. They're carbivores, as I call them. And so you can very well do that and just live off of pasta and Oreos and French fries and Coke. Not my definition of a vegetarian.
No.
Right, but people do it, and all day long they're vegetarian, and they come in and or they live on fruit, and then their blood sugars are through the roof, and they have,
They're like, "Why am I not healthy?"
"Why am I gaining weight? I don't understand." Right. So, I talk about that a lot in the book. It's not my favorite. I depend, I test for MTHFR gene mutation. If you have that, I really don't recommend it because you need to get those B vitamins. You have to supplement anyway. I absolutely believe that no matter which program you go on, you should be eating 60 to 80% of your plate should be vegetables or something from the farm and from the earth that's living, that has fiber and nutrients in it. That's what our body requires. So I think I hit all six. Did I hit all
Yes,
six?
you did. Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. That was really, really helpful and just so comprehensive. So, thank you for going through that and just really explaining the pros and cons and what would be long term, what would be short term. Short term, I think that would be that's really, really beneficial. So, and that was just amazing. And I want to ask you. You mentioned your book, and I know you also have a thyroid course out as well. And so, I want to give you opportunity to share about those and let us know how people can find you and connect with you. But also give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you want to just mention that we haven't touched on, go ahead and do that. And then just share with us how we can connect with you.
yeah. So just the last thing I would say is that it really does matter what you eat.
Yeah.
We know that. We see it in here every single day. And these pills that we get from the doctor are not necessarily fixing us. People walked in. I had somebody come in yesterday with 7 medications. I said, "How you feeling? You probably have the picture of health with 7 medications." Because I feel lousy. And I'm like, well, that's because you're not fixing it. You're trying
Yeah.
to manage it, but medications really block a lot of nutrients. So we're plugging one hole at the front of the boat, but two just popped up at the back. And then we
Mhm.
just keep doing this chase, and then we don't feel well, and then we're not checking our nutrients. So it really matters what we eat. Get your labs done, take a look inside and see what your health status is. Um, Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's such a great point. I'm glad you brought that up again because I did want to emphasize that just the amount of labs that you do. And this isn't just, oh, I just think that maybe we should try this. Like you have the roadmap, like you said. And I just think that's so important too, that it is tailored to what you personally need. So I really encourage people to understand that. And do you work with people long distance or do they have to be in your office or?
No, I work with people virtually all over the world,
Oh,
actually. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great honor to watch people heal every single day.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
people I do have my thyroid course that I'm super proud of. I have put everything I know and all the years of research, all the tears, all the Googling, I did it all in here, so you don't have to do any of that, which I would have killed for if I was not
Yes.
it. But it's called Achieving Optimal Thyroid Health, and it really tells you everything, all the supplements, all the food, all the labs you need to order, how to read them, what they mean, different. I give a bunch of examples with people's blood work, and it's a really, really, really comprehensive course. I'm very proud of. People can find me on my website at Risa Groux Nutrition, RISA. Last name is GROUX, nutrition.com. You can find my course there. You can find my book, Food Frame, there. My book, Food Frame, is also on Amazon, on Target, and on Barnes and Noble. And then I have my detox and a line of supplements that I'm super picky about. There's no gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, crap in them, no additives, dyes, chemicals. And I have all that there. And in social media, everything is Risa Grew Nutrition, TikTok, and Facebook and Instagram.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Risa, for being here today, for sharing your heart with us, your expertise. I know this is going to be so beneficial and such a blessing to so many people. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having this discussion.
Yes, it's been so amazing. So, thank you. And I will put in the show notes all of the links that you just shared with us. So, it'll be very easy for anyone to just be able to click on that and go find you, connect with you, find those things. And thank you so much. So, hopefully, it's been beneficial to all of you listening. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me on SM Enlightenment Radio or TV, or joining us on the Journey with Jennie podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please download my podcast and leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does help, and I would be so grateful. I'm Jennie. Have a good one.